towers behind the moon. And what does this emissary of the Bound King do, exactly? Jorgen was keeping his temper, but only just. It had been a long 3 months. He found he was looking forward to people beginning to arrive for the summit. At the end of the day, while he might grumble and grouse, he actually liked helping people. They could sometimes be abrasive or arrogant or clueless, but they were generally sincere, and their queries served a purpose even if they weren't always straight with him about what that purpose was. It didn't help that it felt like he'd spent most of the last 3 months talking to heralds who seemed to take joy in making him personally angry.
Oh, well, of course. What they do is, they serve as an emissary, you see. An emissary for the Bound King.
The shorter of the two heralds, a thick-set fellow in rich finery that reminded the civil servant of highborn attire, but ripped and torn and pierced with hooks and metal spikes, had a gurgling voice that made it sound like it was gargling snot and drawing pens. It didn't make an effort to conceal the sniggering contempt in its voice, its eyes flickering with malicious joys, and took great pleasure in, once again, answering Jorgen's questions in the least helpful way possible. "Yes, I understand that," said Jorgen, marshalling his dwindling reserves of patience. "But what does that entail?"
Oh, you want specifics. The civil servant wants specifics, Oblaronat.
No, thought Jorgen, seething internally. What I want is to punch you on your weird little nose, you arrogant... The other herald, etiolated and with every inch of their skin marked with curling cicatrix scars in the shape of sinister sigils, leant forward conspiratorially. "Then we should give them to him, Laronitob. Why, the emissary of the Bound King. They are responsible for resolving situations to the benefit of our master, the King on the Throne of Chains. When there is a problem, they take the lead in dealing with the situation. If someone causes a problem for the Pale Monarch, why, the emissary, they would ensure the problem was taken care of." "You're talking about murdering people, aren't you? Because honestly, we don't encourage that sort of thing here." Both heralds pretended to look shocked, but exchanged smirking glances.
"Oh, no,
said the first one with a grimace that Jorgen supposed was meant to be a smile.
"It's all very much above board. The steward of the Bondest Marches is a friend of the Empire, remember? The emissary just acts as the cold hand of the Lord Restrained when he wishes to touch the Empire, to help its citizens."
The other broke in, echoing its partner's expression. "And in return they receive rich recompense. They are compensated for their time, you might say. They reap the rewards for efficient handling of situations. The kinds of rewards only the King of the Thrice Cursed can provide them with." They both giggled. Jorgen mentally counted to 10. "Right, I understand that now. A representative of Tharim." Both of them winced when he mentioned the Eternal's most common name, and he found that made him feel a little better. "So who is it?" They both burst out laughing. "Oh dear me, no," said the taller one, while their partner continued to chortle. "We're not allowed to tell you that. That's for our master and the emissary to know." They both stopped laughing, all joviality gone, their faces flat and full of threat and malice.
"And for you to find out,"
said the shorter of the two in a voice like a knife being sharpened. And then they both smiled again, and Jorgen felt a cold shiver run up his spine. Mortal magic. The Tally of Shrouds. The stars are missing in Ossium and Semaholm. Naga in these territories experience a powerful role-playing effect. The night skies over Ossium and Semaholm are inky black just as they were last season. More traditional shrouds, the penumbral veil, hang over the freeborn territories of Madruga and Kahraman. The shrouds that previously hung over the Baron, Spiral and Zenith have now faded away. Naga Influence. Any Naga who has spent significant time in Ossium or Semaholm experiences the following roleplay effect. Your natural urge towards subtlety and secretiveness is greatly strengthened. Naga in general relish being mysterious and secretive, but while experiencing this potent role-playing effect, you may need to make a significant effort of will to answer direct questions or to be honest about your intentions. The role-playing effect is significantly lessened at Anvil. Indeed, the longer one stays out of a territory where it applies, the less pressing the urge to secrecy and subtlety becomes. But a Naga with a strong lineage who has spent time in at least one of the shrouded territories will still experience the role-playing effect at least until Saturday morning. The Stars of Astalat. A peculiar shroud has warped the night sky over Astalat. Following the autumn equinox, a peculiar phenomenon is observed in the night sky over Astalat. While the moon and stars are still mostly visible, it seems as if there are additional constellations in the sky, unfamiliar to Imperial star watchers. On some nights, these stars seem to resolve into actual images, visible for an hour or two after moonrise. In the northern skies, plainly visible to those who study the stars, is a silver bird, perhaps a firebird, surrounded by 3 silver crescent moons, carrying a red rose in its talons. In the southern skies, the shimmering image of an eagle with silver cambion horns can sometimes be made out. It's not unknown for ritual magic to create peculiar imagery in the night sky. There have been recent incidents in the Brass Coast, for example, but they are much less common in the skies over dawn. The magical birds prompt much discussion. People are not afraid, but rather fascinated as to why a coven has chosen to make these specific images appear. Are they a hidden message? A prophecy? Do they refer to the heraldry of specific noble houses? Or is there a deeper symbolism to the choice of creatures depicted? The images become weaker as the months progress, and by the time people are beginning to make their preparations to head to Anvil, they have vanished completely. Spirits in Casanea. For the past 3 months, a curse has hung over Casanea. The effects of the curse linger at Anvil. During the autumn equinox, someone unleashed a terrible curse of winter magic on the highborn territory of Casanea. Winter's ghost unleashes malignant spirits to torment the people of the territory. Crops fail, animals sicken and die, inhabitants suffer malaise and nightmares, unseasonable weather causes floods and droughts. Preserved foodstuffs are ravaged by rot and mould, as are buildings and such vital implements as pit props and support beams. Misfortune, weakness, hunger, and dread run rampant. Tempers fray and everything goes wrong at once. All farms, forests, businesses, mines, manor sites, and herb gardens in Casanea have provided only 3/4 as much as they would usually be expected to. The magic of the curse has died away by the dawn of the winter solstice, but there are still echoes of the destruction and decay wrought by its magic all over Anvil. The winter's ghosts. Spirits unleashed by this ritual are rarely visible nor entirely material. They sometimes appear as emaciated shapes, sometimes skeletal, sometimes with obvious unnatural features, such as twisted horns or glowing eyes. Others manifest as nothing more than howling winds and whispered threats, or looming presences that surprise lone travellers. They never actually attack anyone, but where they pass, misfortune follows. Castles of Wisp and Wonder. Magical fortifications have been raised in Bregisland, Harnmark, Herkinia, Calavesa, Morrow, and Theranin. During the autumn equinox, Imperial magicians raised a total of 12 magical fortifications in the Empire. 3 of them were called from the domain of the Breath of Winter. Great castles of ice and granite were raised in the hills of North Spires Harnmark, Caerleigh Morrow, and North Pines in Herkinia. The voice of the quiet forest of Navarre wove the forests of Herkinia and Theranin with magic of the Spring Realm. Vast swathes of thickets and thorns were turned against the heirs of Terenuel and the Glen of Shadows, Old Ranging and Summer's End in Herkinia. The bayous of Eastring and Theranin served as moats for the walls of woven branches. At the same time, the Susivari Frost Coven of Wintermark raised 5 castles of mist over the fens of Rushes and Ottermire in Bregisland, the marshes of West Marsh and Calavesa March in Calavesa, and the murky waters of East Ashes in Theranin. The Spires. During the autumn equinox, the Concordium of Pallas wove an enchantment to aid the Doyen of the Spires. The Doyen of the Spires represents a unique college of magic in Urizen. Born in the wake of the destruction of the Halls of Knowledge, it is a bold project that allows magicians from across the nation to work together on the codification of ritual texts, using the Heliopticon to pool their immense magical knowledge. The loss of Spiral and Zenith impedes the work of the Spires, but following the autumn equinox, a potent enchantment settles over the Heliopticon towers, and infuses the magicians working to formulate the magic of the Regrow the Land's Heart arcane projection. Apparently created by the Concordium of Pallas Coven, the enchantment functions in ways rarely observed by Urizen magicians. It seems almost as if the magic moves in some fashion, pooling and focusing wherever the work on the ritual is being done, then shifting like quicksilver strands between Heliopticon towers to another part of the nation entirely. This seems to be a function of the unique nature of the college, whose essential nature exists more of a metaphor than a physical building. It's notable that wherever the magic is actively supporting the work of formulating the ritual, lights of all kinds take on a distinct metallic sheen. While this is most notable with the great lamps of the Heliopticon towers, it's still noticeable in the studies and libraries where magicians work to make the ambitious spring projection a reliable ritual. While under the effect of the autumn magic, scholars find it much easier to communicate complex concepts concisely, and there are notably fewer errors in the messages sent via the Heliopticon. Several magicians speak not of being inspired as such, but of finding it significantly easier to see how the rough and ready concepts and techniques built into the arcane projection could be refined and reworked to create an effective formulaic ritual. OSC note. Any Urizen magician is free to roleplay that they experienced this magical effect while they were contributing to the codification of the Doyen of the Spires ritual. Through the Black Gate. During the winter solstice, it will be possible to perform Whispers Through the Black Gate between 8:30 and 9:30. The current Imperial Necromancer is Enchantress Claudia Varkulova Remis. The Black Gate can be opened to allow masters of winter magic to commune with the spirits of the dead. For reasons that have never adequately been explained, the gate can only be opened at twilight when it is neither quite day nor quite night. Imperial magicians prognosticate that this means that during the winter solstice, the ritual can be performed in the hour between 8:30 and 9:30. This information is of course of particular relevance to the Imperial Necromancer, given their powers and responsibilities. COVID restrictions. We often have players come to the makeup department for help with wounds and lineage trappings when they're being the subject of Whispers Through the Black Gate. Due to COVID restrictions around providing makeup for players at this event, we will not be able to assist with this. Players will have to do any makeup themselves using their own supplies in a space that is not our makeup area. Denizens of the Realms. Calidus. The High Tontine of Calidus is ongoing. The Prince of the Argent Tontine has made it known to the civil service that he would like to thank the citizens of the Cassanean Empire who took part in his Low and High Tontine and his edible high-stakes game. He reminds the prosperous that the High Tontine is ongoing, and notes that all those who have been involved should find correspondence from his secretaries informing them of the current shares. He will be placing a means to contact him in the hands of Oscuro Kira di Tassato, should anyone have any questions or points of order. Sorin. The next trial of the Pallid Charm will be taking place at the upcoming solstice. Exequi, Herald of Sorin, has made it known to the civil service that all who took part in the trials of the Pallid Charm have been invited to the next stage of the trials. Some are progressing as trial participants, others invited to witness or perform another role. The Dragir Agent Annual will be sending letters to all in Anvil to explain what their role is to be, options they have to change, who is with them, and to remind folk who took part in case the details of the conversation are lost in the strange mists. After checking with the Imperial prognosticators to find a suitable conjunction, Anya has laid out an invitation to the next trial at the Regio the Unquiet Hounds in Bittershore, Ossium. The prognosticators confirmed that a conjunction exists at 9 o'clock on the second evening of the summit for this location. Varian. Revel will be visiting Anvil at 7 p.m. on Friday of the upcoming summit. At the autumn equinox, the challenge the Iron Duke ritual was cast a number of times. Varian's great organizer of challenges and celebrations, Revel, has announced that he will need to meet with many of these people. Some will receive their challenge scrolls right away, and others will need to converse with him so that an appropriate challenge can be designed. Revel intends to visit Anvil on Friday evening between 7 and 8:30, and has told the civil service that he intends to hire a space from a family in the Brass Coast where he can talk comfortably with challengers. He will also be happy to see anyone further along in their challenges if they wish to update the Lord of the Crossroads on their progress, but notes that this is not in any way required. Tharim. Tharim has recognised a new keeper of Tharim's throne. The Castle of Thorns in Astalat unexpectedly received a visit from two heralds of Tharim, who rather grandiloquently informed them that the Bound King would soon have a new representative in the Empire. An agent of their Lord and Master will apparently be visiting Anvil at the upcoming summit to discuss the responsibilities and expectations of the role with the new keeper. The Keeper of Tharim's throne is not an imperial title, so it's not entirely clear why Tharim took such pains to let the Empire know he's appointed someone to the position. It has been mentioned twice before, once in response to the plenipotentiary during the spring equinox 381 YE, the other as reward for tributes offered to the rulers of the wasteland. The civil service asked for more details, but reportedly were answered with cryptic half sentences, knowing looks, and quite unnecessarily sinister chuckling. Elenrith. Elenrith has withdrawn from all communication with the mortal realm. Though Elenrith has been under a declaration of enmity since the winter solstice 381 YE, there have been some rumblings from her home in the realm of day over the past 2 years. Until now. Raelyn Clearwater, a reclusive fate who occasionally served as mortal representative of the Eternal Flame, has reported to the civil service that following unfortunate recent events, the Swan has chosen to enter a period of self-cleansing. It's not clear what relevance or impact this will have for the Empire. Elenrith is not connected to any imperial rituals. There is some speculation among the Illuminates of Urizen, and among the scholars of the Unfettered Mind, as to whether this withdrawal could have anything to do with the recent transformation of Murit and Sogta into Azoth. Such metaphysical discussions are enjoyable, but rarely supported by anything other than tangled webs of speculation and conspiracy. The civil service duly report the message and suggest that the Archmage of Day may be in the best position to find out more about what this portends, if anything. Lashonar. Lashnar's game has been postponed. During the autumn equinox, heralds of the Chatterer visited Anvil recruiting participants for a game or contest the details of which were vague at best. The contest was due to take place at the winter solstice, but shortly before the beginning of the summit, a gaggle of black and white feathered heralds appear at the hub, where they cause mild chaos. It takes some time to get the details of exactly why they're there, but it appears that their mistress has unfortunately had to postpone the proposed contest until the spring equinox. There are half a dozen reasons suggested from the weird mist all the way through to ominous premonitions, and honestly the civil service failed to make head nor tail of it. The fact, though, is that the contest, competition, demonstration, theatrical event, is still going ahead, but not until spring. The representative of Mason. 100 slaves are delivered to a small border town in Semerholm. There is a strange occurrence in Parel, a small town in Estmere, 2 weeks before the autumn equinox that may be linked to some kind of agreement between an imperial citizen and the eternal Mason. A small force of Druge unexpectedly emerged from the southern forests. They brought with them exactly 100 human slaves, terrified and cold, who they released onto the path to the little town. The orcs lurked out in the early snow out of bowshot of Parel's defenders until the first of the humans reached the gates, and then melted back into the forest. The little group is composed of a mixed selection of freed slaves, 2 Skull Highborn who describe themselves as having been part of an ill-starred crusade into the Barrens several years ago, a dozen Urizen, formerly of Zenith, a brace of Dornish knights showing obvious signs of extensive torture, and the rest League citizens taken from the farms of Holberg over a decade ago. One of these last bears a message. They have been gathered and released on the order of the Het, as a result of the actions of Danica Lydia van Temeshwar, the imperial representative of Mason, as promised. Most of the traumatized former slaves are now recuperating at the house of the Prophet Hand. Once they are well enough, they will be free to return to their old nations, or remain in Caer Falcon to help with the operation at the house. Challenge for the College. The Archmage of Summer has announced a new challenge for the patronage of the Icy Crag of the Eternal Sun. With the challenge issued, the College of Magic has no special patron. The tourney is expected to take place during the summer solstice 384 YE. The Iron Duke has offered his assistance in the smooth running of the tournament. Who better to account for the volatile demands and nature of the rulers of the Summer Realm than one of their own? As such, his trusted herald Revel visited Anvil last season to gather information from Imperials on some of the intended rules for use during the tourney. Any Eternal who wishes to offer patronage to the college must find 3 Imperial magicians willing to fight on their behalf, using only mage armour and implements. As such, there is expected to be a number of Eternals interested in recruiting a team during the spring equinox 384 YE. Zakalwe. Heralds of Zakalwe will be visiting Anvil at 2 o'clock on Saturday of the upcoming summit. 3 heralds of the General of Day, Aegon, Armiger, and the opening Gambit, are looking to discuss the matter of the tourney with those put forward by the Generals of Navarre, Urizen, and the League. Zakalwe has sent a missive to the Archmage of Day, Skyware's Gralka, to facilitate the meeting. Further reading. Cloud waves break. A wind of magic talking about the memory-altering mist settled across the Empire. Impossible landscapes. Regarding the winter solstice, plenipotentiaries called by the Archmages. Stone and Stone. A number of offers made by the Eternal Adamant to the Master of the Koboldi. A horn resounding. Discussion of the Summer Children, including boons offered by many Eternals. Faded from the winter. Details peculiar magical dreams experienced by those of Briar lineage.